Hello, my name is Everett McKay, and I'd like to welcome you to Persuasive UX, how to make your case, get your team on board, and talk your managers and clients out of idiotic design ideas. Here's our agenda for today. I'd first like to take a look at what doesn't work, those things that we tend to do, they don't really seem to work when we have battles over a personal opinion. These are usually battles we can't win. Next thing I'd like to do is look at the problems and give you some insights about those problems so you can better understand how to be successful. I want to then look at solutions, what we can do to be persuasive to get our team on board. We're going to then have a hands-on exercise where you can give all this a go with a real design challenge. And then finally, we're going to have a summary and a wrap-up. I'm offering this course in both live virtual and on-demand formats. If you are taking this course on demand, feel free to send me questions about the class or send your responses to my questions at training@uxdesignedge.com. Why are we here today? Why do you care? The reality is most designs require some sort of approval. You need approval from a client, you need approval from your managers, you need approval from your team, and therefore, if you can't get approval, you can't do your best design work. Your design ideas are really only as good as your ability to sell them. Designers, even experienced ones, have a hard time explaining and convincing others. Very often we think very intuitively, so it's very, very difficult to explain in objective terms why we need to make the decisions we've made. As a UX design trainer, many people have requested the ability to be more persuasive on their team as a top goal for design training. In fact, usually the top requests are how to make designs more intuitive, how to make them more simple, and how to be more persuasive on their teams. Unfortunately, the reality is great design does not sell itself. We have to sell great design. But unfortunately, poor design somehow seems to hold its own. It's very difficult sometimes to talk people out of poor design decisions, especially if they came up with those ideas themselves. There are a variety of different situations. I'm going to be focusing today on more general solutions that you can apply to a variety of situations, but there are different problems that require different solutions. The first situation is you might be encouraging good ideas or you might be discouraging bad ideas. Another case, you might be creating a new design, or alternatively, you might be improving an existing design. You might be convincing designers or you might be convincing non-designers. You might be addressing the big picture, high-level ideas versus the low-level details. And then finally, you might be dealing with peers, managers, stakeholders, or developers, so different people require different types of persuasion. After I started working on this talk, I discovered a book called Articulating Design Decisions by Tom Griever. The interesting thing is, this is an hour course. His book is about 250 pages long. We both cover the same narrow topic, but somehow there's very little overlap between the two, which I found quite surprising. Griever focuses on understanding, listening, responding, and following up. So I think it's a fine book, and I would recommend it if you're interested in more of the human side of this challenge. Just to look at one example, one of my favorites from his book, he talks about converting likes to works. So the idea behind this is that our personal opinion is always right. If I say, for example, I don't like spinach, that is a true statement. You can't tell me that I actually do like spinach. It's my personal opinion. It's always right. Therefore, if we're having a discussion over personal opinion, you can't tell me if I don't like a design that I'm wrong. So it's very difficult to be persuasive. However, if we change the conversation not to what we like or dislike, but what works or doesn't work for the target users, then we have the opportunity to recognize that maybe we're wrong. Maybe what we think our target users like or dislike is wrong, and therefore we have more of an opportunity to be persuasive. So he calls that converting likes to works, and I think that's great. One thing that I was looking for, though, and I didn't notice in his book, is that one bit of advice more on the human side is that once you've made your case, once you've kind of won and you've persuaded your team, I've got 2 words of advice to you, and that is shut up. Shut up. If you keep talking, you keep kind of explaining things after you made your case, the only thing you can really do is remind people that maybe they weren't quite that sure, or maybe it wasn't such a good idea after all. So once you make your case, stop talking, say thank you very much, and move on to something else. Let's explore a bit about what doesn't work when we're trying to persuade our team. If we have battles over personal opinion, the problem is the hippos always win them. So let's explore that. Battles over personal opinion. Design discussions are very often battles over personal opinion. After all, design is personal and subjective, right? So if we're trying to figure out what to do, it's usually argued over personal subjective terms. Now later on, I'm going to try to make the case that design decisions are very often much less subjective than we tend to think they are, but nevertheless, most teams, when they're having design discussions, make them very personal, make them very subjective. Design is also an art, right? It's very artistic, and therefore we can disagree over art. It's very difficult to get consensus on personal, subjective decisions. This is a cartoon that I really like. It's from OK Cancel, and basically the story is our hero is climbing the highest mountaintop looking for the guru above all gurus who knows the ultimate truths of user experience design. So he says, "Great guru, what is the secret to a great user experience?" And the great guru says, "Well, it depends." And the interesting thing about this is that that's very often the way a lot of design discussions go. Someone asks a basic question like, should I use a checkbox versus 2 radio buttons? And everybody kind of goes around and around and around. The only thing anybody can really agree to is, well, it depends. If you're trying to persuade a team, especially a technical team, saying it well depends is very unpersuasive. Hippos are always right. In case you're not familiar with the term HIPPO, HIPPO stands for the highest paid personal opinion. So if you're having some sort of design discussion, some sort of design meeting, you're trying to figure out what to do, and it's a discussion primarily about personal opinion, the way it always works is that the highest paid person in the room has a tendency to assume that their opinion is the right opinion, and everybody else is not right if they don't agree with them. Therefore, if we're having a battle over personal opinion, the hippo wins and you are going to lose. Another challenge is best described as saying that the inmates are running the asylum, and this is based on a book by Alan Cooper. Basically, the idea that Cooper has in his book is that engineers, developers are the ones primarily making design decisions, and as a result of that, we have user experiences that are made from the technical point of view that aren't very good. Developers are primarily focused on the challenge of writing code. They oppose what they don't understand or value. So this is a challenge for us if we're trying to persuade our team. Also, I've made the observation that Agile and Lean really aren't helping as much as we might think they are. Agile is all about sprints and velocity and creating potentially shipping code. Lean is all about getting that MVP out the door in customers' hands. And if you put the two together, if we have both Lean and Agile, very often what we have is poorly designed but shippable MVPs. Honestly, I think a lot of teams that are practicing Agile are really only pretending to care about user experience design. One thing I've noticed is that they use user stories, so if you drive the process using a thing called user stories, you have a tendency to assume that that means it's user-centered, and usually it's not. The bottom line is, if a design discussion is a battle over your personal opinion versus the opinion of your managers or your developers, you should expect to lose. If you want to prevail, we need something more.